Hello, everybody.
Hi, happy Wednesday.
Yes, happy Wednesday to you all. Again, we're not traveling this week, but we're going through this. This is the third of our 3 sessions on talking about why be Catholic. And we're taking this from the 2nd chapter of Patrick Madrid's book on why be Catholic, and it's the historical case for the Catholic Church. Yesterday we left you with a rather compelling statement that Patrick makes in the book. If it can be demonstrated that Christ did establish the Catholic Church, then everyone on earth should be Catholic. I see this as the ultimate answer to the question, why be Catholic? And he talks about going through the Gospel of Matthew, a series of biblical clues leading us to the Catholic Church. So the first one, the church Christ established is visible. Jesus declares to his hearers, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do men light a lamp and put it under a bushel, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." And that's from the 5th chapter of Matthew, verses 14 to 16. This statement has twofold significance. First, it describes what each individual Christian is called to do and to be in this world, to shine forth to others the light of Christ. Christ is also describing the church he would establish as visible, not obscure or hidden. I ask myself, why would Jesus have gone to all the trouble of establishing a church just to make it so arcane and obscure that no one could ever really know for sure if he had found it? What good would that do? Similarly, since Jesus never did things halfway or for no good reason, I ask myself what purpose it would serve for the church he established to be hard to locate, and how this would square with his statement that, individually and corporately, his followers, the church, would stand out like a city set on a hill. That sure seemed to me to be a promise that the church would be clearly visible for those who were willing to look. And one additional realization deeply impressed itself on me, namely, that Christ specifically ruled out the notion that his church would be hard to locate when he said that no one lights a lamp and puts it under a bushel, because doing so is counterproductive, self-defeating, and incoherent. And one thing is for certain: Jesus' own life and deeds show that he was none of those things. I don't think he could have been any clearer about this than when he said that the reason one would light a lamp and put it on a stand is so that it can give light to all in the house. This told me that the church he established must also be prominent and visible. Second, Jesus Christ, not some other man or woman, is the founder of his church. In Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 to 19, Jesus asks his apostles, "Who do men say that the Son of Man is?" This elicits a series of incorrect answers. Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. Then he asks the proverbial $64,000 question, "But who do you say that I am?" Alone among the apostles, Simon Peter replies, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus answers him, Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the powers of death shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. There is a great deal of important theological truth packed into this brief passage, and it's not my intention to explore that here, except to point out the particular line that sheds light on the church the Lord was going to establish. He says, "On this rock I will build my church, and the powers of death shall not prevail against it." This clue told me that, whichever church it was, it had to be able to trace itself back in an unbroken line of continuity from the present day to Christ himself. Or to say it in a different way, any church that was established by someone other than Christ could not credibly claim to be that church. Some, such as Joseph Smith, the founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, more commonly known as the Mormon Church, have claimed to have restored the true church after it had been lost. A great apostasy destroyed the church Christ established, they claim. But the biblical evidence refutes such a notion. Third, Jesus promised that he would be with his church to the close of the age, or to the end of the world, as he says in Matthew chapter 28, verses 19 to 20. This is another way of saying that the church he established would last until the end, literally come hell or high water. The Catholic Church is visible, both in its outward appearance of lay faithful, the Pope, bishops, and priests, as well as in its distinctively Catholic doctrines, such as the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, its Marian teachings, the Mass, purgatory, sacraments, and so forth. These clearly visible outward marks of the Catholic Church can be seen today. They can be seen 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago. Indeed, they are visible and apparent some 2,000 years ago, all the way back to the time of the apostles. The Catholic Church, with its teachings and outward distinctives, is present from the very beginning. This stunning realization is what caused the 19th century Anglican Protestant academic John Henry Newman to declare, "And this one thing at least is certain, whatever history teaches, whatever it omits, whatever it exaggerates or extenuates, whatever it says and unsays, at least the Christianity of history is not Protestantism. If ever there were a safe truth, it is this. This is shown in the determination already referred to of dispensing with historical Christianity altogether, and of forming a Christianity from the Bible alone. Men never would have put it aside unless they had despaired of it. To be deep in history is to cease to be a Protestant." And if you recall, if that sounds familiar, that was what Marcus Grodi, one of the things that Marcus Grodi, I helped Marcus Grodi coming to the faith as well. Patrick goes on, "I discovered the Catholic Church was present in every century, every generation, from the present day all the way back to the apostles. the popes, the bishops, and those peculiarly Catholic doctrines, such as the Eucharist, can be seen in an unbroken line tracing all the way back to Christ. As you go back in time, though, all the other Christian groups extant today begin to disappear. Century by century, toward the time of Christ, the Catholic Church is there, usually in its seemingly perpetual state of internal difficulties and external challenges. But there it is. All the other Christian groups that sprang up along the way vanish as you roll back the calendar. In the first century, what you don't find is non-denominational Christianity. No Calvinists, no Baptists, no Jehovah's Witnesses, no Mormons. Christie's dad's proof text arguments against Catholic traditions missed the ultimate biblical foundation behind them. The Catholic Church required time and reflection in order to develop its own theological vocabulary, nomenclature of precise terminology with which it could adequately articulate its teachings to a world that often misunderstood or mischaracterized them. Terms such as Trinity, Incarnation, and transubstantiation are the result of this long and at times difficult process of forging a new vocabulary. Like the acorn and the oak tree, the Catholic Church in its infancy could not be expected to resemble the more mature church of the present age. The Catholic Church is a divinely constituted living organism composed of human members, with Christ as the head of the body. For example, you won't find in the Acts of the Apostles any mention of titles such as Monsignor or Archbishop, or a reference to Vatican City. But this is to be expected, because the Catholic Church glimpsed in the pages of Acts is the infant church, and it looked different from how it does now. The Catholic Church is just like the mustard seed Christ spoke about that grew from a tiny speck into a nearly tree-sized plant with many branches spreading out a great distance. I'm not suggesting that theological propositions, for example, the existence of God or the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, are like atoms, azimuths, and animals, capable of being proven using science or mathematics. While there are objective, empirical methods for measuring, verifying, and even disproving theological claims, they cannot be positively proved with mathematical certitude the way, for example, it can be proved that the area of a circle is equal to pi times its radius squared. The truth of Catholic teaching lies in the Church's biblical foundations and rich history, not in evidence gathered solely by the scientific method. Truth is not always provable scientifically. The truth of love, for example, cannot be demonstrated on a chalkboard. We see and sense the effects of love, as well as the actions that so often betoken it. A kiss, a smile, a hug. But these are not proof that love is there. Judas, after all, betrayed Jesus with a kiss. We all know from experience that certain things are true, even if we cannot prove them scientifically. The love between husband and wife, parents' love for their children, etc. We have all the proof necessary to know these truths. Some are explicit, saying I love you. Some are implicit, the father working long, tedious hours to support his family, or the mother who stays up all night tending to a sick child. Just so, the truth of the Catholic Church and its teachings can be borne out in explicit as well as implicit ways. The evidence itself, as well as the logical, necessary conclusions and inferences that must follow from that evidence. So if you do have questions, if you want to learn more about your faith, I would encourage you to become more involved in some of the different faith formation, adult faith formation activities that we have at St. Mary's. Many of those opportunities you will find in the bulletin or on our church website, churchofstmary.org. I would encourage you to learn more about the history of our faith, learn more about the different tenets about what we do teach about our faith, and always turn to Christ, who is the head of the church, as it was said. Pray to him, ask him for his help and guidance, particularly if you're struggling in any particular area. And know that there are people who can help in that regard at the church. We hope you have a very good Wednesday, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
God bless.
I wanted to also share with you that this coming weekend, we will have our annual 40 hours devotion, which will begin begin with the noon Mass on Sunday with the opening of 40 hours. It's a wonderful time to get in touch with, in particular, the Eucharistic Lord present in the Blessed Sacrament and shown in the monstrance during those 40 hours, during those 2.5 days. And would encourage you to participate and come and be involved with that. And we're very excited that we knew him as Deacon Jonathan, who is now Father Jonathan, is going to be our guest homilist. So we certainly look forward to seeing him again and hearing from him as well about the different aspects about our Catholic faith. So we would invite you as well to participate in that. Highly encourage you to participate in that as well. Until then, we will see you hopefully this weekend.
God bless.
God bless.